Hello everyone. Today we are going to read lesson 6 My Sister's Sister part 2. Section 1. Baro Didi wasn't an ordinary person. My sister said, "Well, she isn't an ordinary person. She is an aunt of the king of Assam and is very beautiful in spite of her age, and she knows so many languages: Bangla, English, Hindi, French, and what have you. Has gone about globetrotting on her own and has visited on many foreign countries. I tell you, she isn't afraid of anything, nothing at all." "Did you know her before then?" Mother asked. My sister said, "No, I met her on the train. It was sheer good luck that I was sitting near her. She hardly spoke to me at first, just keep looking at me every now and then. Then she suddenly asked me, 'Do you sleep during the day?' I said, 'Why do you ask?' She said, 'I can't stand people who sleep during the day, especially during a train journey.' I laughed and said, 'I don't sleep during daytime.' This pleased her immensely, and she spoke to me very pleasantly after that. She told me ever so many interesting yarns. She is a great storyteller." I hardly realized how rapidly the hours flew. I got so engrossed in them. Meenu Didi said, "What were the stories like? Do tell us some." But my sister-in-law stopped her and said, "No, no, come to the point. Tell us about the Dacoits before anything else. When did they get in and how?" My sister said, "Okay, I will tell you about her yarn some other day. Let me tell you about the Dacoits first. There were about 8 or 10 women in the ladies' compartment. The rest were all men." My sister-in-law exclaimed, "Good heavens! You don't mean to tell me that menfolk also travel in the ladies' compartment?" "Of course they do," said my sister. "I suppose you haven't travelled by train for ages, that's why you know nothing about the things that happen these days. No one cares a hang about rules and such things. I remember telling a ticket checker once, 'There is a regular mob in this compartment. Can't you make them move elsewhere?' The ticket checker merely shrugged and said, 'No, I can't, although I know for certain that many of them are travelling without tickets.' Well then, Baro Didi said, 'Let them remain during the day if they want to. I'll make them get down once it is dark.' I was quite astounded at her words and said, 'But Baro Didi, are they going to listen to you?' Baro Didi said, 'Of course they will listen, if I tell them properly. A lot of men are given to snoring I can't sleep at all when there is a snorer around. That's why I don't travel by the general compartment and always go in for the ladies' compartment. Well, it soon grew dark. Baro Didi got up from her place and said in a real commanding tone, "Look here, boys. You would better get down now and find a place somewhere else. I have allowed you to remain here long enough." She spoke as if the entire train were her personal property and it was she who decided who should sit where. But strangely enough, most of the menfolk left our compartment quite meekly without any argument whatsoever. Two of them were Bengali boys, and I quite expected them to argue about her sudden order, but they didn't and got down silently. Section 2. Only 3 men remained. They sounded extremely apologetic as they told Barudidi, "Please let us stay a little longer. We have to get down after 2 more stations and there isn't an inch of room anywhere else in the train." Barudidi said, "Are you quite sure?" They said, "Of course we are." We passed the next station. Baro Didi spread out her own bedding, keeping her pretty little woven cane jewelry box beside her pillow. Then she told me, "Please keep an eye on my things while I go and wash my hands." We passed the second station before Baro Didi was back from the toilet. She returned and sat down in her place. Then she said in a stern voice, "Hey you, what do you mean by remaining here? Why didn't you get down?" The 3 men stood up. "Were they the dacoits then?" my sister-in-law exclaimed. Kuku Didi said, "Bodhi, please don't interrupt. Let Chotan tell her story." My sister said, "Yes, indeed they were the dacoits." They stood up and said, "We don't get down at stations. We are used to jumping down from moving trains, but before we do that, hand over whatever valuables you have, all of you." The 3 dacoits pointed their pistol and dagger at us. All the girls started crying and screaming hysterically. My own heart was thudding. Then I glanced at Baro Didi. She merely looked at the 3 men angrily. Baro Didi turned to me and said, "Sit still. There is nothing to be afraid of." Then she whispered something in my ears. The other girls handed over all their jewelry and cash. One of the ladies refused to give her necklace. The bearded dacoit just tore it off her neck. Then they came towards us. The one who was obviously the chief said to Baro Didi, "Look here, grandma, better hand over all you have." Baro Didi said, "I am not your grandma." The dacoit said, "Oh well, granny then." Grandma or Granny, whatever you like to be called, let me have all your jewelry and fast. Baro Didi turned to me and said in a disgusted voice, "How boorish and ill mannered the present day dacoits are." Fancy pointing a dagger at a lady. Now, in the olden days, even the dacoits used to be cultured and soft spoken. We have had dacoits breaking into our house so often, but no one ever tried to scare off women. I remember how once Raghu, dacoit's son Madhu, had broken into our house. What a nice boy he was! He stood before me with folded hands, saying, "Mother dear." The three dacoits interrupted her and said, "For goodness sake, cut it out. We have no time to listen to your yarns. Show us where your things are." Baro Didi said, "Oh well, if you are in such a hurry, wait. Don't you dare touch any of us. All my jewelry is in this cane basket. I'll give it to you just now." Section 3. Baro Didi opened her basket. The three dacoits bent over it eagerly, but the moment she took off the lid, a huge cobra lifted its head and hissed ferociously. I suppose it was a toy snake made of spring. We all said together. My sister said, "Of course not. You only see toy snakes in films." This was a real big live cobra with an enormous head. The three dacoits screamed and took a few steps backwards. The cobra looked at them and swayed dangerously. Baro Didi opened her handbag and took out a small flute. The moment she blew into it, the snake slithered out of the basket and made a beeline for the dacoits. The dacoits were so stunned that for a moment they could not decide what to do. Before the leader could speak, the snake entwined itself around one of his legs and held its hood right over him, ready to strike at any moment. Baro Didi said, "If I blow into the whistle once more, the snake is going to strike. Shall I?" The dacoits, thoroughly unnerved by this unexpected turn of events, burst into a volley of howls, crying, "Save us! Take pity on us!" Baro Didi said, "But I feel a real strong urge to blow into the flute, really play it. What shall I do about that?" The three dacoits threw down all the money and the jewelry which they had taken on the floor and said, "We'll rub our noses on the floor of the compartment if you like." Baro Didi then spoke to the snake in a caressing voice and said, "Cobra darling, leave the wretched man and come to me, will you?" The cobra really listened to her words. It let go of the man's leg and stood coiled up in a corner. Baro Didi said, I also have a viper here. I haven't taken it out as yet. That one has a bit of a temper, you see. With the entire country packed with folks like you, well, I always make it a point to carry my tame snakes with me. Baro Didi really made the three of them rub their noses on the floor, and as soon as the train slowed down, they jumped from the running train and took to their heels real fast. But funnily enough, all the other ladies also dashed out of the compartment at the very next station. They thanked Baro Didi for saving their money and their jewelry, but refused point blank to travel with two live snakes. So, of course, the two of us slept comfortably all night. Baro Didi told me all about the techniques of taming snakes. A tame snake is even more obedient than a pet dog. So, this was the reading of our lesson 6, My Sister's Sister. If you have any doubt or query, you can ask me in the comment section below. Also, don't forget to check the description box below for the links to the other chapters. Thank you, everyone.